Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Vedya Dravinam Tvameva Sarvam Namadeva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Namadeva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Bhadram Karnebi Shrunuyama Devaha Bhadram Pashem Akshabhirya Jatraha Sthirayarangai Sushtubhagum Sastanubihi Vyashema Devahitam Yadayuhu Swasti na Indro Vridhashavaha Swasti na Pusha Vishwavedaha Swasti nastaksho Arishtanemihi Swasti no Brahaspatir Dadhatu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we are in the third chapter. What verse are we on?
We're in the third chapter, section 1, verse number 4.
Third chapter, section 1, verse number 4. Will you help us out, please, Puneet?
Prano hyesha ya sarva bhutair vibhati vijanan vidwan bhavate tanivadi atma krida atma ratihi kriyavanesha brahma vidan varishtaha. Knowing well, the prana is illuminating all the beings. The wise man stops all his blabberings, sporting in self, delighted in self, and ever engaged in enjoined activities. This man is the best of those who know the Brahman.
So again, the major point of this part of the Upanishad has been for us to see the distinctionless distinction between Nirguna Brahman and Saguna Brahman. Nirguna Brahman, Nir or Nis, without guna, qualities, Brahman. Brahman without qualities, always experienced as the eternal subject. I. Saguna Brahman. Sa means with qualities, Brahman, is the phenomenal world. And this is always enlivened and illuminated by the prana. Remember in the back, in the past, we talked about the whole cosmos. Prana Rayincha. Energy and matter. Not just physical energy, but cosmic energy. So here, the prana is that which enlivens, illuminates the entire phenomenal world, lights it up. Saguna Brahman. And where does it all take place? In consciousness. And again, this becomes easy to understand if we go to the dream state. You are the god of your dream as an individual. So we can say the stuff out of which the dream is made is nothing but the fabric of your mind. What does the mind do? The mind splinters, the mind refracts into an individual knower identified with a dream body, which then cognizes a dream world, and then has the apparently interior experience of thoughts and feelings. All that takes place in the dream. I like to use the example, it's like when sunlight hits a prism. It's the one sunlight, but once it hits the prism, it refracts into the spectrum. So is the red end of the spectrum different from what's at the other end? Blue?
Violet.
Violet. What's the difference? Only in vibrational quality. All of them together are nothing but the sunlight appearing as the spectrum. Likewise, in the dream state, it's the chitta, the stuff of mind itself, which appears as knower, knowing, and known. Macrocosmically, this is no different. Because of Maya. Maya is a really weird word. One etymology, that which is comprised of ma, nothing. It is the word we use to describe how the impossible seems possible. Now, within the dream of this world, mind you, your ego is not doing the dreaming. Your ego is a character in Ishvara's dream. In the dream of this world, the material cause, the stuff out of which all the names and forms are made, is nothing but consciousness. So what? Consciousness never really leaves its swabha, its nature, its essence, which is Satchidananda. Sarvamaya, Sarvam Ananda. So as the yogi begins to withdraw their habituated reactivity, their habituated belief in the solidness and concrete nature of the phenomenal world, amazing things starts to happen to the mind. When the mind itself quits believing itself, it settles down. So we can say Nirguna Brahman is like the deep ocean. Saguna Brahman is like the waves. Are the waves fundamentally anything different than the ocean? So if you go out in a boat during a Pacific storm and the waves are crashing and it's huge swells and things like that, and the boat is tossed, and then the storm passes, and then the sea is very calm. Where did the waves go? because they were nothing but the ocean. So what the mantra is implying, when through profound insight, it's never done out of willpower, it's never done out of some moralistic struggle, we let go of our attachment to the world. Raga, Vesha, Bhaya. Raga, I have to have it this way. Vesha, I'll never have it that way. Bhaya, fear. It's okay the way it is, but boy, am I afraid it's going to change. When those dial down, just like when the waves become the same as the still ocean, the mind becomes blissful. We begin to see the deep underlying shanti, peace. It's my real nature. Now, for the Raja yogis who endeavor to quieten the mind through pranayama and the bandhas and things like that, you can momentarily kind of squeeze the mind into quiescence, but it never really lasts. And as soon as you quit the practice, there's this world that upsets me all over again. But the methodology in the Jnana Yoga tradition, based on the Upanishads, comes from realization, comes from the deep insight into what's really going on. And of course, let me give you a minor, real life example so many of us have had. So there you are in traffic and you need to be at a particular appointment at a particular time. And the traffic is backed up. And you know you're going to be late. Who's ever had that experience? And then all of a sudden you're gripping the steering wheel and you're trying to push the traffic with your heart. And then what happens? Krodha. You effing. Krodha's anger. And then at some point, you get tired of being so stressed and you go, oh, I'll get there when I get there. Let me text him and tell him that I'm caught in traffic. And you let everything go. Who's had that experience? Now, the traffic didn't move any faster. You did not resolve the struggle of ego. Ego says, make it different so I feel okay. What did you do? You dropped the struggling. You let go of the struggler. You saw the pointlessness of the struggle itself. A minor worldly experience that most of us have had. The ancients, it was the ox cart that was backed up. That's who knows. But they began to see, now wait a minute. Peace isn't necessarily dependent on me getting what I want. Let go. Let God. And in the end, deep mystic revelation. This is not a teaching we give to beginners. Nobody dies. Bhava, being, is never really touched by the vicissitudes of this world. So as you and I, through our own practice, begin to see, no matter what happens in the world of name and form, Nirguna Brahman, the self in me, is never touched. Self in me is never touched. Why do I think the people out there are touched by it? They may not know this, but that doesn't change what it is. Europe for hundreds and hundreds of years. People did not know the earth was a globe. They thought it was flat. Didn't change the earth. So the point here, when I know the Nirguna Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, and I know the Saguna Brahman, Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma, all this is verily Brahma. Then there's no inside, outside. Any thoughts on this?
There seems to be like a habit pattern in the mind that seems to carve out the inside and the outside, which I guess is a false pattern of moment to moment. Like, it creates the sense of like, okay, this is not me and everything else is me, and so then it tries to struggle to get rid of the not me, I suppose, or something that it doesn't like, and seeing that itself drops the entire like package of the struggle itself.
Absolutely, yes. So I may have shared this with you before, early on in my study. I wondered why we call this Advaita Vedanta. What does Advaita mean? Or the Buddhists say Advaya, same thing. What's it mean?
Not to.
Not to. I said, well, why don't we call it Ekam Sat Vedanta? I like that much better. Ek is one truth. The Vedanta, one truth. That's what the Upanishads seem to be teaching. They don't call it that. And the reason is, just like Puneet was saying, the fact of our direct experience is I see stuff. I know stuff. I cognize what looks like other. If I understood you right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the initial practice of, the Vedanta is like, I am not stuff, right? The neti practice. And that builds this notion of like a subject separate from the world. And then the reconciliation is like, oh, actually the world is also like that sort of separation was a false separation.
Yes.
And then.
But why do we do that first practice first?
I guess to let go of the world, and it's
because I think I'm the body. Because I think I'm the body. That's the bija vasana. Remember, we have anyonya adhyasa. Anyonya adhyasa is mutual superimposition. First superimposition, I superimpose upon the self the qualities of the not self. I'm the body, I'm my feelings, I'm my stories, I'm etc. But then what do? The not self, meaning the world of name and form. I externalize my own nature. Bliss is over there. I love David. He makes me happy.
But then isn't there like a, I guess it's constructive to say, yes, I don't I feel a negative emotion or something, and I'm like, oh, okay, actually, I'm not that negative emotion because I'm very happy with that, as well as maybe even the positive emotion of happiness. I'm not that either, but that creates this sort of duality of like, okay, whenever something unpleasant arises, immediately there is this identity, like the subject or the me and the not me gets created with that neti-neti practice.
So what would you say is a better approach?
I guess not a better. I'm just curious as like, that is not the end, right? Like, so like the resolution of that also creates a mini suffering, I suppose. Like,
but it's already there. See, you're not creating a new suffering.
Right. You're revealing it, I suppose, in some way.
What the first thing we want, going back to Shankara's journey, we've almost finished with Vivekachudamani. And remember at the beginning, I asked you to study it not from the standpoint of the Shishya, but as a baby guru. How did Shankara do what he did? What is the process that he takes us through? Now, you have to start with the assumption that maybe he knows what he's doing. He's a lot smarter than you or me. Can you buy that one?
Yeah.
Okay. So what does he start with?
I'm the body.
You got it. The glory of a human birth. Don't waste it. Attaining full warrior-like spirit. He calls it manhood. I'm not sure I like that term. Then what does he do? Are we stuck there?
He moves you to subtler.
And what's the next subtler thing that he does?
You look at the mind.
And what is what's that section?
The kosha section on the kosha.
No, there's a very important section before that.
The qualifications of the physical.
Yes. So what is it that's getting qualified? Is it the self?
No, it's the mind.
It's the mind, yes. It's not the body either. He's moved you from body identification into subtle body identification. He doesn't say it explicitly, but it's very clear what he does. Develop viveka, vairagya, samadhi guna, mumukshutva, bhakti. All those sorts of things. These are qualities of the mind. I am going to develop being adhikari. You're completely allowed to stay identified with ego. Why? Because that's where the student is. Then what happens next?
Then you start to see the different layers of the mind itself.
7 questions. 7 questions. Remember the 7 questions?
Yes.
What is bondage? How does it come about? How does it continue to exist? How do I get out of it completely? What is the not self? Who is the real self? What is the process of discrimination between the two? There's an assumption that there's a self and a not self in the very 7 questions. Then we engage most of the book, and he does it in 2 batches. The first batch is the 3 bodies: Stula Sharira, Sukshma Sharira, Karan Sharira. I'm not the gross body. I'm not the subtle body. I'm not the causal body. That's one map. Then he does it all over again with another map called Panchakosha, the 5 koshas. I'm not the Annamaya kosha body, physical body, food sheath. Pranamaya kosha, the energy sheath. Manomaya kosha, mental sheath. Vijnanamaya kosha, intellectual sheath. And then he has, for the first time, really this in-depth analysis of what in this section he calls karta. What's karta mean?
The agent, the doer.
The doer. the ego sense. Why does he analyze it so completely? So we can see that that's not me. And then he talks about the Anandamaya quotient. We get the in-depth analysis of what I call the pleasure principle. Every night when you go to sleep, it is wonderful. And we have the direct evidence that we do not need objects in order to feel good. But the mind is still covered in ignorance. And then he goes into in-depth talking about vasana. And then at the end of that section, the Shishya says, "Oh, Guruji, after having negated everything, there's nothing left. By what instrument then is the self to be known, to the self to be realized?" What's Shankara answer?
The self itself.
And very subtly he says, in a subtle intellect. Realize that you are that witness. So the insight happens to the subtle intellect. So we talk about these direct experience of the self and the insight that the intellect gets. Very subtle section. Then he shifts gears. And he starts talking about the phenomenal world. And what does he say about the phenomenal world? We just went through it.
It's the reflection of you itself.
It's not the reflection. It is you. Not your ego, but the self itself. So this is where we knock down that second part. And it's a pedagogical system. Now, if we turn around and read Mandukya, he doesn't bother with pedagogy at all. Takes you right to the highest of wisdom. But for beginning students, can't you see it's all Brahman? No. Why can't you see? I don't know. I just can't see. I don't get it. That's what happens. Is that making sense? So it's a pedagogical tool. Pedagogical tool. So don't get caught up in having problems with the partial truth that Shankara gives us. Is that helpful?
It is, yes.
Swami Vivekananda has a quote that relates to your exact question, which he says you have to use the system to get out of it. I feel like that's relevant to your question.
So why bother to go into the Panchakosha? It's all illusion.
I was just saying that the system might create a bad habit, I suppose, because you're relying on the system. But in the end, you have to abandon the system.
But you already have the bad habit.
Yeah.
The bad habit is I'm convinced I'm the body.
Right.
You know, if the federal government says you're an illegal alien, get out of the country, but we're going to let her stay. Or when you went off to India, when your mother passed and you couldn't get back in the country. How'd you feel about all that?
Annoyed, I guess.
Yeah. You thought it was pretty damn real, I bet. So that's what we have to deal with. And the mind does that. No blame. That's the human condition. That's Maya.
So I guess seeing the fact that there is a bad habit itself is you go through this to realize that there is this habit, and that habit has to be kind of seen through.
And that's exactly what we spent weeks and weeks and weeks dealing with. I mean, again, Vivekachudamani is a process book.
Okay, I'm satisfied.
Now, trust your intuition. What you may be dealing with is maybe you have a particular bad habit or doubt. Don't necessarily generalize. It may or may not be true.
But even Shankara says that all of this is essentially a bundle of assumptions and bad habits, which is the Jiva Bhavana.
That's right. That's right.
All of what?
The problem with the mind is just bad habits. And those habits have to be let go of.
Bad mental habits.
Right.
Yeah. But what is the cause of the bad habits?
Ignorance.
The non-apprehension of what is. So it's not just convincing myself. So Shankar will say to just sit down and go, I am Brahman, I am Brahman, I'm not the body, I'm not the body, I am Brahman, I am Brahman. It's a wasteless use of speech. Happens through deep insight, always.
So then it's like the seeing of the mind and how the mind is creating this false sense of the ego and sort of seeing through all of that.
Now, let's switch systems. So you've been taking these Goenka retreats,
Yeah,
where they do a body scan.
yeah. I mean, sure. I'm not fond of that either. Not. I guess the word is like it has its limitations too. Like every system does.
But why do you think they do it?
I mean, they say that the body is more visceral than the mind, so it's an easier thing to notice because maybe emotions and sensations last longer than a particular thought because thoughts are more fleeting.
I push back on that, having never done one. I think their assumption is the body and the mind are the same thing.
Right. Eventually, they do say that, but the question I thought you were asking is why the mind over the, or rather, why the body over the mind? And their reasoning is the body is a more visceral thing than the mind.
And it's much more direct.
Right.
Much more direct experience. But that's a system. That's a dualism.
Yeah. And I think I was caught up in that as well, which is like, you're so focused on the sensations that you kind of get trapped in that habit of constantly noticing a sensation and creating a
But
duality.
have you been trapped?
It's a false trap, I suppose, or an illusion of a
Has
trap.
any of those things ever touched you?
No.
Who's worried about getting trapped?
Sure, but while the feeling was real, it was an unreal thing, but I believed it was true at the time. Yeah.
What about now?
I've seen through the illusion that yes, the sensation is not me, but while doing it, it feels quite real because there's this. Whenever a negative sensation comes up, there's this feeling of wanting to resolve it, which creates the duality because I don't accept it as me. And so I guess the system creates this duality is the problem because you create a technique.
I push back on that. I think you already have the duality.
But then there is a place where the duality ends.
That's correct.
But
the system says, let's work with the duality that you're already stuck in. And then give you a way to get out of it.
Sure. But that way to get out is if you don't see that way out, then you're stuck in the duality of the system.
Well, that's because you either give up the practice or you don't pay attention to what the guru says. Sure. I'm pulling your leg.
Yeah, I understand.
Good questions. Good questions. We don't ever want any stupid questions. And the only stupid question is the one you don't ask. Now, things that's so paradoxical. When the yogi develops that capacity, just drop everything. I call it unknowing the mind. And from here, all the ideas, habits, schmabits, dualism, schmoolism, just go.
So the place of unknowing, that place of operating can happen even while you're acting, and doing stuff.
And that too is a mind state. How did the Buddhists say, emptiness is form and form is emptiness? We enter into the state of nibbana. And then that passes. Ordinary mind is in the world. So the Zen people use the thing of you don't have to walk around with a mirror to make sure your face doesn't fall off. And in the end, it's unfigureoutable. All these notions that we get in scripture at best point. How do you understand it? How do you directly experience it? Abhyasa vairagya cha. That's what the tradition says. Practice. Sit on your effing ass. And vairagya. Let go, let go, let go. Let go of struggle. Let go of resistance. Let go of any concept, including this concept. One of the great and meaningful lessons in the life of the Buddha. He was either incredibly stubborn, couldn't find a teacher, got all caught up in sorts of sidetrack things. But what finally did he do? He sits under the damn tree and says, I'm not going anywhere till I see what is. Isn't that what he did? He just don't do something. Sit there and allow the mind to unload. And the truth became evident to him. He didn't say he was special either. Good stuff. All right, next verse. Next mantra.
Satyen labhastapasa hyesha atma samyak jnanena brahmacharyena nityam anta sharire jyotirmayo hi shubhro yam pashyanti yataha shina doshaha. The self is attained through veracity, concentration, wisdom, and continence. Cultivate all of them constantly. When impurities thus dwindle, the ascetic beholds him stainless, resplendent within his very body.
So here we have what looks like cause and effect. What was the first one? Satyam?
Mhm.
Integrity, truthfulness, straightforwardness. How did he translate it?
Veracity, so true.
Yeah. But it means more than that. It means living a life of integrity. And the second one?
Concentration.
Yes. What was the word? Dhara?
I guess Jnanena, by wisdom.
By wisdom. The idea of being able to get some discipline in the mind so it's not tyrannized by its indulgent tendencies. The third one, brahmacharya.
Yeah. No, wisdom, and then third was wisdom, and then fourth is continence.
Yes.
What does continence mean?
Continence means, he's trying to translate brahmacharya, which for a monk means celibacy. For a householder, it means the intelligent use of your sexual powers. The deeper meaning of the term, charati, means to roam about. So brahmacharya means to roam about in Brahman. What the ancients understood was how powerful lust is, and how easily we can get really addicted to that endorphin rush, hot sex. And then that becomes a complete distraction. There are deeper meanings of it too, such that your sex power is also part of the energy for the Kundalini. So what Swamiji is trying to indicate here, the way I like to frame it, your sex powers are God-given. When the Victorians got into India, they brought that kind of Puritan, sex is vile, base, filthy, and disgusting that you say for someone you love. That's crazy. Your sex powers are God-given, not to be despised, but not to be used lightly. That's the deeper meaning of it. Thing to do is roam around in Brahman, and that stuff will take care of itself. And was that the end of it, or was there another?
That was the last
one. Okay, so is it cause and effect? If I do these things, will that make me realize? No. These are preparatory. What do? They thin out the mind. Buddhi Shuddha. They purify the mind, which then becomes the instrument for Atma Vichara, inquiry into the nature of the self. Koham, who am I? If I try to inquire into the nature of the self with a dull mind, nothing happens. I don't get it. But if I get fixated on the preparatory practices, then you get all caught up in trying to be a goody-goody. That isn't it either. So the purification practices are for the purpose of cultivating the wonder sword of knowledge, sharpen it. Then inquire the nature of the self. How much purification do I need to do? That depends on how vulgar you are. That's a karmic predicament. Some people have to do lots and lots and lots of sadhana before their minds are pure enough to be able to get the direct experience of the self. Other people, it happens very quickly. It's not about IQ, and it's not about having an advanced degree. It has to do with subtlety of mind, which is basically a karmic predicament. So he's summing up the path and the goal here. Any questions on this? Next one.
Satyam eva jayati nanritam satyena pantha vitato devayanaha yena kramantya rishayo yapta kama yatra tatsatyasya paramam nidhanam. Truth alone wins, not untruth. By truth is laid out the path divine, along which the seers, free from desires, ascend to the supreme abode of truth.
So let's parse this one. So we start with worldly truth. Truth alone wins. I don't know whether it's really a cultural norm anymore, but back in the late 80s and the early 90s, when I was traveling in India, people would talk about fibbing. I can remember being in Delhi, and I was asking someone on the street, how do I get to such and such and so and so? And the fellow did not know, but he didn't want to say that. Somehow he would lose face, so he gave me false instructions. It was fascinating, fibbing. In our culture, we call it white lies. You know, you don't want to go to a particular event. Someone says, oh, I'm having such and such event on this day. We'd love to have you be there. You say, oh, I'm sorry, but I already engaged on that day. White lie. That's not true. You just don't want to go. This, in the end, is corrosive because it undercuts sankalpa. It undercuts intention. You want to have your word and your intention line up. For a yogi, it's incredibly important and powerful. Doesn't mean you have to be rude, but there's always a way to be truthful. This is just the basic thing. Your word gains power. Your intentions gain power. Practice satya. Now, higher levels of truth. There are modes of living which are conducive to the ordering of society and peace of mind, and other modes of living which are adharmic. They screw things up. So the yogi wants to be faithful to the Dharma. Again, every scripture is in its own cultural and historical context. Your ultimate authority is a well-formed and well-informed conscience. But that's Satyam at another level. Then there's truth on the highest level. Who are you? What is this world? How does it come about? What's the truth Brahman. This world is Brahman. The names and forms are imagination. Be true to that. That's the highest truth. Keeping that goal of the truth in mind is what we're invited to do. What's the second part of the mantra?
By truth is laid out the path divine along which the seers free from desires ascend to the supreme abode of truth.
So we have to have some shraddha. You have to have some faith. And we talk about the 4 pramanas. Pramana means a means of knowledge, and it also means an authority. So by truth, the path and the goal is laid out. We have the path and the goal, primary source laid out in Shruti, in the Upanishads. Then we look to the recorded evidence of the great saints and sages and avatars through time. What does Lord Krishna say? What does Ramana Maharshi say? What does Ramakrishna say? What does Tulsidas say? What does Swamiji say? They say it's true, it's true, it's true. Third praman is your own reasoning. I like to say that real spirituality is nothing more than profound common sense. It never asks us to believe in something that is illogical, that is unreasonable. It may seem so at the beginning, like David and I are doing Mundakopanishad. We got to the 4th Karika in the 2nd chapter. Remember that one? Where Gaudapada says, the phenomenal world is quite unreal, and the proof of its unreality is that you can see it. That doesn't seem reasonable. It doesn't seem logical. But then in that 2nd chapter, breaks it down, shows us why. That's actually the more logical position. And then the 4th praman, what's the 4th one?
Your own experience.
Your own direct experience. And they should all line up. They should all line up. So why do I teach from these dusty old books? So many Westerners especially have said, oh, Jim, just speak from your heart. I just think that's silly. Why? Because the tradition itself, the scriptures, are a praman. They're a means of knowledge. They're incredibly powerful. I use the Vedanta scriptures, the work of Shankara, because it works. Now, there's lots and lots of other stuff out there. Just put the word spiritual in front of it, you can rationalize damn near anything. What you're getting in this satsang this morning, studying the Upanishad, is the same teaching which the sages of ancient times crossed over the ocean of change. Why? Because it worked. All right, next month.
Brihishcha tadivyam acintyam rupam sukshmacha tatsukshmataram vibhati durat sudure tadihantike cha pashyat swahyaiva nihitam guhayam. Vast, divine, beyond all imaginations, shines the truth of Brahman, subtler than the subtlest, farther from the farthest. It is here within the body. The sages realize it verily in this life as seated in the cave of the heart.
Yeah. So we'll parse this one. First place to start. In the literature, we have these two terms, Jivan Moksha or Jivan Mukti and Videha Moksha or Videha Mukti. The first, in this very body, in this very life, become liberated. The other is work very hard, be a good person, and if you're lucky, when you die, you go to Brahmaloka, and at the end of the age, you're liberated beyond the body. The Upanishad here is saying, first of all, in the end, they're both the same. There's only one liberation. What is liberation? When the jnani realizes, I am Brahman. There is no other moksha. So, in this very body, meaning while you're still here, realize who you are. Now let's parse it starting at the top. What was the first idea?
Vast.
Okay. So when we thin out the mind, listen to the traffic. Who hears? So you can't find a person. It's being heard, but by what? This vast, empty space of your shoreless ocean. Next idea.
Divine beyond all imaginations.
It is divine. The scriptures thunder. I am Atma, Brahma. Brahman is the word we use for ultimate reality. The scriptures will say it is the context of the entire creation, the substrate. Birthless, changeless, deathless, omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. The same yesterday, today, and forever. It's what? That vast space of witnessing consciousness. Is Brahman. It is the divine. Next idea.
Shines the truth of Brahman.
It shines. You are not a zero. You are not nothing. You are Purnam. You're full. What am I full of? You're full of you. And when we think of it shining, meaning it is the illuminator of everything. It illumined everything you experienced in the past. It will illumine everything you experience in the future. And it's illuminating what's going on right now. It is the knower of the field in every field of experience. Doesn't mean your egoistic mind's going to have all information. Doesn't mean that. But it's not inert either. It's not shunya. It's not void. There is a school of philosophy, a school of Buddhist thought, which is called the Shunya Vada, the scholiasts of the void, who posit, this school says go have this experience, and this school says go have that experience, and they're all different. There is no ultimate reality. There are only viewpoints, and none of them are fundamentally real. Vedanta does not say that so. The emptiness and voidness is absolutely unverifiable in the end. Brahman is. Next idea.
Subtler than the subtlest.
Yes. So it's closer than hand or foot, closer than your breath, closer than your innermost thoughts. So going back to what you were sharing earlier, when you see subtle aversions, thoughts of subtle separateness, what is the knower of all that stuff? Don't create a separation. Just see whether or not the knower is ever touched by any of that stuff. You can't create a separation. All you can do is notice what is. Scripture is saying is you subtler than the subtlest and an unchanging reality. Don't believe me? Get quiet. Next idea.
Further than the furthest.
Yes. So it is the context for the whole creation. The Voyager spacecraft, for the next billion years, if they keep going, they will never reach the end of the phenomenal universe. And consciousness is beyond that. In Gita, Krishna says, in one tiny, small portion of my infinite being, little, tiny, is the whole cosmos. Next idea.
It is here within the body.
Yes. Meaning it is my very self. Right here. Next idea.
The sages realize it verily in this life as seated in the cave of the heart.
So the spiritual heart is not something geographically located in the body. I like to say if it's a bear cave, the bear is content, the cave is context. If it's a bat cave, the bat is content, the cave is context. So the cave of the heart, where is it? Where thought, feeling, memory, perception take place. There's nothing but the field of awareness itself. Realize that it's yourself. Is that the last?
It doesn't feel like a. If I try to think about where does my thoughts or feelings occur, it doesn't. Feels like a dimensionless here.
That's correct.
I can't describe it any other way.
It's avyupadesha, as Mandukya says, the seventh mantra. Untalkable, indescribable, but directly knowable.
It feels like a trap to say it is here within the body.
The implication is don't wait till you die.
Or what?
And do it now.
So why do they stress this so much? Like, so it does. It's ultimately it's of no consequence.
Because there are schools of thought that say if you do punya and accrue merit, and you do ritual and you expiate papam, when the body is gone, meaning when you're dead, then something will happen. It's no different than what the Christians teach. You know, be a good Christian, and when you die, you get to go to heaven. Something that happens after the body, beyond the body. So the Upanishads say, no, don't wait. Liberation is possible right now. Don't get caught up in the literalism there. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sat in on this mantra?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll quit here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om.